to success strategies and considerations for buying and selling pool routes. I'm really excited about this one. We have seen at Skimmer about a 58% increase in the number of pool routes that are a number of accounts that have been canceled because someone has sold their pool route this year versus last year. And I don't know why that is. It could be that, a lot of people have gotten into the business, during the pandemic or are making their way out, or, a number of other factors, but we're definitely seeing a lot of movement within the industry. And so I'm really especially excited to have, these two pros here with us today, Kyle and Thomas, who have a lot of experience in buying and or selling pool routes. So I'm Nikki Acosta. I'm the Director of Marketing at Skimmer, and I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, starting with you, Kyle.
My name is Kyle Peter with Nevergreen Pools. I'm based out of Sacramento, California. And we've grown our business over the past 6 years from 12 customers to pushing 1,000 customers. And we've done about a third of that through acquisition, and then the rest through marketing and organic growth.
And Thomas.
Tom Walsh. I'm in Venice, Florida, in the business just about as long as Kyle, 6 years now, just short of 400 pools. I have bought pools, sold pools, bought routes, sold routes. I'm on both sides of it. Used it as a growth mechanism as well as a consolidation mechanism to tighten up my routes. And I continue to do it. I just sold a route for September 1st and bought one September 1st.
And that's thank you both for taking the time to join us. But it is great to have you both, because I think you have different goals in terms of what you're trying to do. Kyle, you're in an area in Sacramento where you're expanding your service area. And Tom, you're really looking at consolidating. So we look forward to hearing your perspective as we get through this presentation. So what are we going to talk about today? I will do the obligatory about Skimmer very briefly. We're going to talk about the different approaches to buying and selling. We'll talk about all the things that go into valuation and determining what a pool route is worth. We'll go into contracts and agreements. We have some really great stuff to share with you there. And transition strategies. Once you buy or sell a route, like what do you need to do to communicate? Last, we'll talk about resources to help you succeed, and then we'll take your questions. You do have a Q&A box that you can pull up to ask us questions. All of the panelists here can see them. We also have Jasmine from our success team standing by to take those questions for you. If you have to leave early, don't worry about it. We are going to send this presentation out tomorrow morning, the recording, the slide deck, and all of the resources and calculators that we are going to cover today. So don't worry about taking screenshots. We'll make sure that we get those to you tomorrow morning. All right, so about Skimmer, we're here to help you build a great business. I think we're close to about 29,000 customers now since we first created this slide. It's been a while, but we're growing all across the US. We've got great folks all over the country who leverage our software to build great businesses. And that is going to cover everything from route management to being able to process all of your invoices and get paid faster, and really just put some organization around your business and some structure to help you succeed. We're going to get into approaches to buying and selling. And so, Tom, I know that you have actually had, experience in this, but Kyle, you also have some perspectives on this as well. So we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of, activity in like the investment world and growth world of acquiring businesses. And it kind of follows the whole craze around buying and investing in real estate. But there are some challenges and some facts that you should be aware of. Essentially, there is nothing tangible that you're actually buying when you buy a pool route. And I think most of our discussion here, we're going to be talking about actually buying pool routes, not pool service and repair businesses. And usually trucks and any kind of equipment would be a separate transaction. So what you're buying, what accountants call is goodwill. So you're essentially buying a customer list, a piece of paper, and you're have an agreement with the seller that they're going to do their best to transition these customers into using your services. So In terms of getting loans, having cash to do this, pretty difficult to get a traditional loan or an SBA loan because there's no real collateral. A bank doesn't see that list of paper as valuable to them because they're not a pool service business. And then it mentions here, using a line of credit from your home. So you're basically putting your home up as the collateral to get into the business. Of course, there's different risk factors there that, is kind of a personal decision.
And that's a recommendation that comes from Chris Webb over at National Pour Out Sales. If someone is wanting to get in the business, but maybe they don't have enough money to cover the route that they want to purchase, that is a recommendation. Typically the interest rates are favorable, but the payment terms can be favorable as well. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to add the other way that you could potentially get a route, especially if it's your first time getting into the pool service business, is you could potentially have the seller finance it, right? So it's called seller financing, where you work out a second type of loan with the seller, or there's partnerships where you could work off the route. Sometimes people call that leasing, where you would work and the seller would continue to collect the income or a portion of it while you are providing the chemicals and the labor to do the route. And then at a certain date or a certain, determined amount of revenue, then those routes would transfer to you.
That's right. And Tom, it's fine. I'd love to hear about your route brokerage experience because it sounds like it was actually really positive for you.
My first route, getting into the business, I'd spent 20 years in the corporate world and was looking for something different and kept circling back to pools. I don't think I would have bought a route if I didn't go through a broker. It gave me the confidence to know that I wasn't just throwing my money away. And I've dealt with people buying routes since then who have the same fear. You're not buying anything tangible. What's to prevent these customers from canceling tomorrow? The reality is most customers are more than happy to just have somebody taking over, and they trust the person that they were doing business with. So if they make an introduction and a transition, they just work that over. But for somebody new coming in the business, the broker adds a level of security for them. There's a certain escrow amount they keep. So if there's any pools that do cancel, they do get their money back. And that makes it a little easier for somebody to get over that fear.
Yeah. And talking to Chris, we did a webinar with him last year. And so if you're looking to know more about route brokerage, I suggest go to YouTube and to the Get Skimmer channel, and you can find that there. But, their position is, they've done 10,000 plus of these transactions. They really focus on having a good process around it. And like you said, if you are wanting to cast a wide net and potentially sell to someone who's just coming in the business, they are the folks that are going to make sure that there is a clear, defined handoff and transition process. Chris likes to say that even if you're not just getting into the business, we also can keep friends friends. So in some states, brokers are required to hold licenses. And so therefore they have a duty to you, both a financial duty, a fiduciary duty, and a duty to confidentiality. So it's one way to do it. But today, what we're going to focus on is more of private sales and the transactions that happen there. So in the course of buying or selling a route, you got to know where to find them. And so my question to my panelists is, where do you find routes to buy or post routes to sell?
I've posted on Craigslist. I've bought off Craigslist. I've bought off Facebook Marketplace. Just general networking within the industry. I do network with a lot of guys locally and have bought and sold to guys locally. Most of the supply houses have a bulletin board, and you'll see routes posted there as well.
Kyle?
Yeah, our approach has just been to be open within the community and share that, yeah, we're looking to grow through acquisition. These are typical multiples we pay. And then word spreads, right? I think we bought our first route through a single poler that was looking to retire that walked into a Leslie's Pool Supply store. And they said, oh, Nevergreen Pools is looking to expand, and got us together. And that's how most of the deals have come about, is people knowing that we're interested in growing through acquisition.
And so in those instances, people can kind of skip the whole searching process, right? Like if you have a reputation in your area for picking up pool routes, you might be the first call, which is a great place to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, and on the flip side, we also know the people, kind of like what Tom does in Florida. Whereas, as he's consolidating and kind of shaping his territory the way he wants, not only is he buying, he's selling. So we also have folks similar to Tom in our area that, if we need a few pools to fill a route or something like that in a particular area, we know to go to them, and they might say, "Yeah, give me a couple months and we'll talk, and we'll pick up maybe just 10 pools to finish a route or something."
So yeah, it definitely highlights the importance of just having a good network too. It sounds like, there are so many transactions that take place. I mean, I go to IPSA meetings regularly, and it's not unusual for folks there to sell off part of their routes or buy entire routes if somebody retires. So it's always great to have that network of people in your area that you get to know and trust. So let's talk about valuation considerations. And we already have a few questions on this in the Q&A. What what is a pool route worth? And that's a very tricky question, because you ask people and you're going to get a lot of different answers. So we'll cover that. And my question to my panelists is, what factors play a role in valuation? Kyle, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is kind of that, this is the key to making all of this work. And in the world of private equity, consultants will be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to come into a business and get into the weeds on every little detail and understand how much something is worth, and is it a good investment, and when am I going to get my money out of the deal? What happens if things go terribly wrong? And so when we're looking at a route, the way I look at it is, if a route in our area is going to be sold through a broker, the seller is going to get 10 months and the buyer is going to pay 12 months because the broker keeps the 2 months. So if someone's selling without a broker, 10 months is probably, the max we would need to offer. And then typically in our area, less than 6 months is usually kind of seen as, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it's like they're not usually going to let something go for less than that unless it's a unique situation. So the 6 month of annual revenue to 10 month of annual revenue of just that reoccurring pool service. So not filter cleanings, not annual chemical fees or conditioner fees, filter cleanings, repairs, all of that stuff. So you're basically looking at, I have 100 pools and I bring in X a month, and we're going to offer you a multiple 6 to 10 of that to purchase the pools. And how we arrive on, are we going to the 6 mark or the 10 mark, is based upon some of these factors you see there. Is it an area that's tightly populated with other pools we're already servicing, so we have no added costs to get there? Our truck's already, at the next door neighbors. The pools are in good shape, brand new, good equipment. We like that for service. But of course, you're not going to have the repair revenue with newer pools. Is there a decent rate already? Is it a rate that makes sense in your math and your formula? What's included? What's not included? If we buy pools from someone and the rates are good, but they're used to getting filter cleanings are included, no extra chemical costs, free service calls. I know it's difficult for single pollers to charge a service call rate because they're already in the backyard, but that is hard to translate to a larger company that has a repair team and a service team. If it's a larger purchase, are there employees that would be interested in being rehired or are hired by the buying company? Are the customers that would be involved in this transition, are they used to being on auto pay and paying with a credit card? Does the seller have email addresses for all of the customers? We've tried to do deals before where the seller didn't have email addresses for the customers, and that's game over for us, because that's how we need to communicate with someone. That's actually what we're buying, right? A list of customers and with their address and email and phone numbers, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's so many of these little factors, but basically you're trying to analyze, if you come in and you take over as a company, will it be a good fit? Will the customer be like, oh, this is a great pool service, it's kind of what I'm familiar with my last company, I'm going to stay, I'm going to be happy, there's no reason for me to get my feathers ruffled and leave. Because as Tom said, most customers, they're just happy that they have someone in their backyard showing up every week. They're not too concerned about, oh, I'm going to make a switch now, I'm going to search online for a new company. So it can be scary thinking of your buying pools like, oh, I'm going to lose all these people. But like Tom said, it's not the case. There's a small drop off. You're always going to have someone that was already on the fence about their existing pool service, or their neighbor's kid started a pool service company, and they're going to use the transition as an opportunity to cancel and move. So again, a whole host of things to consider when you are deciding to buy or sell.
And one of those things I want to touch on too is, customer communication. And this is really around, how are the customers used to communicating with the company that was servicing them before? Are they used to calling someone and having their cell phone number and getting a hold of them all hours of the day or night or weekends? And how do you communicate? Like, that transition can be difficult for certain customers. So it's definitely a factor that we discussed that before we were prepping for this, but I think it's definitely one to consider.
It's certainly a consideration, and it's also something that you have to manage the expectations of during the transition period. As you're introducing yourself to these new customers, it's important to spell out to them how the process is going to work with you and where it may be different than it was with the previous company. If that communication doesn't happen, their expectation is it'll be the same. And if you're a company that has multiple techs and you're buying from a single poler, the communication is going to be different. They're used to getting that person whenever they want, and they may not get you whenever they want. So it's important to set that expectation and to explain to them how it will be better when it's with you and it's not a single poler. There may be differences for them, but overall paint a picture of where it's going to be an improvement for them.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about ROI here. We do have quite a few questions. I'm looking at the chat going, wow, keep them coming. We certainly appreciate them. Kyle, I'm gonna let you kind of go through this just real briefly. What you're seeing on your screen is part of a calculator called the Customer Acquisition ROI Calculator that we'll make sure we send to you after this presentation. But one part of this calculator is on buying routes, and the other part is around marketing spend and trying to acquire customers through marketing spend and activities. For purposes of this presentation, we're looking at the top portion of the calculator, which is the Customer Acquisition ROI Calculator. So if you're buying a route and looking at how much that route is going to cost you, and factoring in things like potential service repairs, like what are you looking at for a payback period? And so you can see there on the left, if you buy, let's just say 50 pools at $130 a month, and you're paying 6x times the revenue there, you're looking at a payback period of about 13.7 months. On the right, if you're paying 10x, obviously it's going to take you a lot longer to reach that period, that payback period. You're looking at almost 2 years. So it can be a pretty significant difference what you're willing to pay. Obviously, if you're a seller, you always want to try to get more. And this is an example that's based on a 30% profit margin. If you are a one poler and you're buying a route and your profit margin is 50%, well, then go ahead and pay the 10x, because as you can see down there at the bottom, it's going to take you the same amount of time to pay that off than if you were, potentially a multi-tech operation with a 30% profit margin. But I think the important thing here is that you have to know your numbers. And Kyle, I know you have some good thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, know your numbers. So that all comes back to having a system, and we use Skimmer, and I don't know anything better than it, where you can load all of your costs, your labor costs, your chemical costs, and then every pool stop, those are recorded in there, and Skimmer tells you what your profit is each pool. For us, we like to look at our gross profit as everything after labor and chemicals, materials are paid. And then from there, we have our overhead costs, and then below that would be our net profit. So when we're looking at purchasing pools, another consideration is if you're buying pools in the same neighborhood, your overhead costs are probably not going to increase all that much. If you're looking at buying pools in a new neighborhood, you're probably going to have that added overhead cost because you're going to have maybe a new truck and more gas and driving to a new route. So the important thing here to analyze the ROI, which is kind of the second piece of the deal, coming up with the price and then when are you going to get your money back, is knowing your numbers first. So knowing how your numbers work, putting them into this calculator, and then also knowing what the numbers are telling you. Because like in this example here, Nikki does have some repair revenue. So she's expecting, $3,000 a month in repair revenue of, which is almost half. So she's assuming half of the monthly revenue will come into repairs. So that makes your payback period look really well. Tom and I both, we do not like to think about the repairs when we're looking at our ROI numbers. We like to purely look at just that guaranteed residual monthly income, and what it looks like for that money to come back. Again, if you're starting off and you have no idea about the pool industry, I saw there was a question, you 100% can do this. We'd recommend you go through a broker, and what the brokers will set up is training. You'll get potentially a month of training with the seller. Now, of course, you're going to pay more for that, right? That's going to cost more, but you're going to get a month training. You're going to understand how pool service works, potentially get partnered up with another repair company to do your repairs. But for that, your profit margin should be really high because you have no labor costs, right? You're buying yourself a job that could scale into a very lucrative business. And so when you put these numbers in there, yeah, you could potentially buy a higher multiple and make the numbers work and get a great payback. So for us, I like to do my calculators at our net profit, right? And so if I'm going to take, for this example, $39,000, and I'm going to tie that money up somewhere, then I'm going to get a cash flow that's $6,500 a month, less all my expenses, my overhead, my labor. And then that, like, let's say that number spits out to be $1,000 a month. So not as good as this example. It's going to take me 39 months to get my money back. Is that something I want to do? Is that a good investment? Or should I put it in S&P 500, or should I buy real estate, or am I investing back in my business? And all of those things I've looked at, and some of which I've done. I love taking control of my investments. Like if I put the money in the S&P 500, I have no control over that. When I take my money and I buy pools with it, I have a lot of control. I can improve my quality, improve communications, give people a really good service that I'm in charge of, and see that ROI. And so no matter what side you're on, the most important thing is knowing your numbers and then coming into using these calculators, make some assumptions, play around with it, and see where the chips fall.
I know that both of you too have bought pools from folks who maybe their pools are fairly underpriced for the area or for the region, and maybe they're due, for a price increase. But what are some good reasons why you have taken on pools that are maybe priced below market, knowing that you probably won't do a price increase for a while?
They have to fit my route. If they fit the route and they help me fill a day in for a tech who's already in the neighborhood, or allow me to grow, Florida's the king of the gated communities. So if I already have 30 in a community, I'll take 10 more that are underpriced, and I'll just target 6 months down the road to increase the price. I've got 6 months to show those customers there's value in what I'm going to charge them. But it depends. It really depends on how underpriced they are. They have to. I'm not going to buy pools that I'm going to actually lose money on. I may not make what I want to make on them, but if it's, I've got some streets where I've got 10 pools on one street. All right, I'm not, I'm parked there already. There's no gas expenditure. There's no nothing. My tech's there. What is it to add 2 or 3 more, even if they're a little underpriced? I'll bring them up in 6 months. The ones I just bought September 1st, they're underpriced, but by March they'll be where they need to be.
And
Kyle, you've bought routes that were maybe not priced so great to get into new areas, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually just, we love skimmer tags, where we use tags for everything. It really paints a picture. We use them for, marketing purposes or recording what's happening at each pool. So we've actually created a tag every time we've done an acquisition. And so I have it in front of me here. We've done 7 acquisitions, 371 customers. Then I can go into skimmer and I change the toggle view from all customers to customers with a route assignments, meaning they're paying us monthly. And that number drops to 238. So that's about a 40% attrition. Now, this is over 6 years. And this is by design. So we looking at this calculator, we're going to factor in a steep drop off, some steeper than others, because we do fairly large, substantial price increases to get people where they need to be. We definitely wait the 6 months to a year and a half to show them what we have to offer, but some people just don't want that level of service. And then this number also is going to factor people that move out of the home. So we might be still doing the pools. We're still getting a return on investment of buying that pool, but it's under new ownership, which we love. It's two benefits there. You usually can increase your rate pretty easily to get up to your current market rates where you need to be. And then second, when people buy homes with pool equipment that needs some repairs, they typically reserve that money, and then they're prepared to spend a large chunk of change on getting the pool equipment up to speed. And so, yeah, that's all factored in. So when we're buying pools that are way underpriced, we're paying 6 months or maybe less to acquire those pools.
And we do have some great resources that I'll share with you later on how to do price increases for those of you listening in and interested about that process. All right, so you found a route that you may want to buy. You know, you negotiated a price. You've decided that it's a good fit for you. Let's talk about structuring the deal. How do you all structure your deals? And Kyle, this is your example here on the right that we're going to share after the presentation. So I'm happy to let you take this one.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure. This has been, a hand-me-down from other deals that people have done, and I'm sure, I don't know who wrote it originally. So again, yeah, it says your consultant attorney, which I would highly recommend you do, especially for your first deals you're doing, because you could be out a lot of money and you could end up having an agreement with someone that's not very trustworthy, which is super important. When you go into these deals, we talk about contracts and agreements. Well, we're small time players. I mean, even some of the largest companies, we're small. And the amount of money you need to spend to enforce the contracts and agreements is usually not worth it. So I like to see these contracts and agreements as just writing down on paper what the game plan is. And Tom does a number of his deals with just a handshake, and we've done some smaller ones the same way. So I just want everybody to understand that to enforce this is probably not going to happen if something goes sideways. So it's really important, if you're not working with a broker, to really trust and have a good relationship with the party you're working from, either selling or buying. So we just want to spell out some things in this agreement. We want to make sure we understand what we're buying, which is a list of customers. We usually call it what, Exhibit A or something like that, which is the actual list of customers. We want to have that. And you never want to do any weird rounding, like, okay, yeah, we'll buy your route we'll just round it to 50 grand. You want to keep it as a multiple of each pool for reasons we'll go into later when we talk about guarantees. So you're going to have that list. It's going to have all your details there. Remember, that's basically what you're buying. You're going to want to have an agreement so the seller doesn't sell you the pools and turns around and markets and picks up those same pools. You want to spell this out, spell out the time period. It's usually 5 years. It's also, if you have any question there, it's usually safer to buy pools from someone that's retiring or getting out of the business. You want to be careful you're not buying someone's dogs, right? Someone's late payers, slow payers, bad pools, bad customers, outskirts of town. You want to be cautious of that. And again, that goes back to having a good relationship with the person you're doing the deal with. And then the guarantee period. So this is why you want to be paying per pool as a multiple, because we typically set up a 3-month guarantee. If the customer quits or doesn't pay, we will get reimbursed for that pool, whether it's with money or another pool. We also pay on the first of the month when we take over a service. We usually withhold some of the payment, and so then that can be used for some of that guarantee at the end of the 3-month period. But you want to spell out all these factors so there's no disgruntled relationship at the end of the 3 months. Another piece here, this is where you'd spell out who's doing the repairs. For us, we are service and repair. So if we're buying pools, that company is not allowed to do the repairs either. And I had another thought there with in terms of making these things go smoothly. But maybe it'll come to me if Tom has anything to add here.
Almost all of the protections in these agreements are for the buyer. The seller gets the money. All the protections are for the buyer to prevent the seller from remarketing the accounts, the guaranteed period. There's very little in this that is in the seller's interest. The check is the seller's interest. It's all to protect the buyer, which is why many times I do a handshake, because I'm selling often. So as long as the person buying from me doesn't want a contract, we don't use a contract. But it is, like Kyle said, very important to establish some kind of relationship so that you have a level of trust with the person you're buying or selling with. I often do repeat deals. You know, the route I just sold on September 1st is probably the 4th route I've sold to this guy. So we just, you know, have a conversation. Here's the pools. You're interested? Yes. Here's the price. Let's go. And that's it. But initially, most new buyers who haven't been in the business before, they want the comfort of a contract.
Yeah, it's good to have it in writing for sure. And again, we'll send this out with a big, beautiful red all caps disclaimer at the top to let you know we are not attorneys and you should absolutely consult an attorney. I know David Van Brunt has helped a number of folks, you know, link them up with an attorney who's created these contracts for just a few $100. So it's always worth your while to make sure that that you're consulting with an attorney to make sure that what you have on paper is legally enforceable if you'd ever need to take that action.
I was just going to add that, you know, in this world of buying real estate or buying businesses, I mean, this whole process is extremely expensive and it's multiple months. And there's a whole system in place for, you know, home inspections, escrow accounts. All this is to protect, you know, both parties. But with these deals that Tom and I have done, you're kind of more at risk, especially as a buyer, because the professionals aren't there doing the due diligence. It's all on you. And so for us, we make it a priority to see all of the pools. You know, you're doing that, you're actually seeing that these pools exist, they're in decent shape. And because you're taking all of that responsibility on yourself.
Have you turned down pools when they are not ideal or routes, Kyle?
Absolutely. Yeah. We went out with someone that was looking to sell, you know, their route. They were looking to retire, and it was about 50 or 80 pools. And after the first day, most of them had black algae, which I mean, we don't deal with that. We can't deal with black algae pools. I mean, just like, you know, tons of it, and just the costs of the chlorine and the expectations and the safety and all that. So yeah, we didn't do any deal.
That's a great pro tip. Go see the pools. Make sure they're real. All right, so let's talk about transition, because this can go very sideways. And, you know, it seems to me like both parties have a pretty good incentive to make sure that the transition is handled well. So what do you want to happen in a transition? Of course, a warm handoff is best, but if you cannot do a warm handoff or make an introduction or, you know, place a joint phone call, you can also handle this through digital means. And so, Kyle, you have some really great agreements that you have put together that you will actually offer your seller. And then as a buyer, you have a follow-up email. And I think you do a really good job there. I mean, this is your introduction to a new customer. So, you know, you want to make sure that you are leaving a good impression with this customer that you're now taking over service for. And there are good and bad ways to do that. So some of the things that I'm going to call out from Kyle's letter is, you know, in all these letters, and we are including an example from the year before as well, like, you know, making sure that you explain the data transition, the communication methods and preferences, like when is your office open? Do you prefer text or phone calls? The billing expectations are a big one. Like, you need to be able to prepare people that as of this date, you will be receiving a bill that may be coming in through a different method than you're used to, and you may be paying that bill differently than you used to. Kyle, you've done a great job in linking when you're buying companies to your team page, saying, hey, you know, Robert's going to be your tech. Please visit our page to read more about Robert. letting people know when their service days are, really important. You happen to include a service agreement, which I think is great. And you also do a good job in making sure that that you convey some value-added services that maybe the previous provider didn't offer. So let's look at these emails from sellers. And again, we're going to send these to you. But these tend to take on a friendly tone, and I think, Kyle, you do yourself a service by making sure you give this to the seller to send out to their customers, right? Because at that point,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It
conveyed.
it's kind of step one, in that evaluation process. And we didn't talk about this, but how long has that seller been servicing these pools? That's very important. If there's someone that oh, I've been cleaning these pools myself for 10 years, those customers trust that seller 100%. And you're going to have very small drop off in the transition. But oftentimes we find that a lot of sellers, they're not, as equipped to prepare an email communication like this. They might be great in the backyard, explain the story, how they're going in for knee surgery and this and that. But we want to prepare them so they can send an email like this. And again, if it's someone that has serviced these pools for years, smooth transition. If it's someone, and this quite often, people buy a route and they sell it before they've even serviced these pools for a full year because their prices are too low and they're not making any money. So it's kind of this double-edged sword. But we want to spoon feed them the communication that basically explains whatever sob story, their retirement, surgery, and then that they found partnered with this other company that's going to take over. They're going to take great care of you. They're going to even do better work than we do, kind of talk us up as the new pool service company. And we typically will do that announcement on the first of a month with the plan to take over the next first of the month. And about midway through that month, by now we've seen all the pools. We kind of have more of an idea what's going to happen. So about 2 weeks before we take over, we send a letter. And is that the next page?
It is.
Be the next slide. Yeah. So then we send a letter that's essentially introducing ourselves, giving a little spiel about us, all the things Nikki said. We have the bio page, which we update right before we do one of these. Meet your tech. Here's the day of your week. Here's your service agreement. Here's how we do things. Sign up for auto pay, blah, blah, blah. And we try to make this transition show the homeowner that we're professional and we're going to take good care of their pool and there's no shady business. Because I think that might be in the back of some people's minds. People love to say, well, I'm not, like, my pool's not for sale, because people will mention, oh, so-and-so bought your pool. They hate hearing that. We usually do not have that type of conversation in front of the customers. Customers could either understand that's how home service business works or contracts work, but essentially we don't like to use that terminology.
Thomas, any thoughts on your transition process and how you handle things?
Very similar. The communication is key. I never use the term selling your pool or buying your pool. Customers don't need to know that. Some of them figure it out, but for the most part, it's a smooth handoff. Here's somebody I trust. And I like the way Kyle does it, where he provides the email to the other company. So basically the two emails are very similar, just coming from two different companies, and setting that expectation, especially those first few months. You really, if you hit the ground running and you do what you say you're going to do, at least down here, after a couple of months, the customers just leave you alone.
Yeah, you said you had a pretty good number of snowbirds. What was the percentage of
probably 40%?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 40%.
So you've got folks that are probably not even there for most of the year.
Well, about most, but certainly gone 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah.
The biggest change to the customer can potentially be if the seller bills at the end of the month and you bill on the first of the month, they're essentially having like back-to-back bills to get caught up. And we definitely want to explain that like this letter does. But it can be hard, and we will work with people on that transition. But the messages, it seems scary, but it's not. You just rip off that Band-Aid and the transition starts, because it is best practice to charge before the service begins for any sort of reoccurring business.
Have y'all bought routes where maybe somebody was, charging for chems and you don't, or vice versa? And if so, how have you handled that?
Yes. I bought a route last year, a small route where they were charging for chems and I don't. And I kept it. I kept that model for those pools. And those are the only pools I bill at the end of the month, because they were done that way. It was a small route. But the rates were very good, and the extra profit from the chems obviously was very good. So I just set them up for auto bill at the 30th instead of the 1st. And then it gives me the month to look through my skimmer data and see what to charge them for the chems.
And that's where I was talking with the valuation. Like if a customer, we call it like on the program, or I used to call it that, where it's like they're going to clean the filters twice a year for X amount. They're going to do an annual chem fee. They're going to pay for their salt once a year for the salt cell cleaning and the salt. And typically the customers are used to some extra charges like that. If they're not, then it's probably not going to be a good we're not going to do the deal. So we just need to align and explain to them like, hey, you're used to paying, you know, X amount per bag of salt. We make it really simple. We just charge you once a year and we make sure your pool is taken care of. So there are those differences. Some are too great where it's not going to be a good deal. And then the other ones, we just tried to explain to the customers how they're parallel. And we're trying to make things simple for everybody. And one word of advice, as we've grown, we've done some things like Tom, where we kind of adopted this other program that they're used to. We found that as we grow, we wish we almost brought everybody onto our one system from day one, just because, you know, at 1,000 pools, it becomes challenging. We already have so many tags to keep track of everybody's deal with that program. Not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying my advice would be to keep things simple and the same and no exceptions, basically.
All great advice. And by the way, we are getting ready here soon to take your questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to ask it in the Q&A. Let's talk about price increases. You know, both of you mentioned that you wait a while. And in one of the transition letters, I did see something that let a new customer know, like, hey, your price is going to remain unchanged for now, right? Like that's a good way to, assuming that they're getting good service and their price isn't changing, it doesn't really give a lot of people a good reason to jump ship and look for a new provider. But at some point, you're going to have to roll out a price increase. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on how you've rolled out price increases to those pools that you've acquired.
I always wait 6 months. And basically I just increase the price. I do a lot of modest price increases as opposed to one bigger one. And I've gotten most of my customers over the last, say, year and a half, 2 years used to an annual increase. So they're getting an increase every year now. So the pools like I just bought September 1st, I plan on a March 1st price increase for them. It'll probably be a little bigger than I'm used to doing, but I'm confident even if they shop around, they're not going to beat it because they are underpriced now. And then that will set them up for another increase the following year.
Yeah, Tom, you really hit the nail on the head when you said they're going to shop around. They're not going to find that killer deal. So I typically find that when we're buying pools from a single polar, they found out about that single polar from their neighbor or friend, and it's under market value. And if they lose that pool service, they're going to either find that other awesome deal from talking to the neighbors potentially, or they're going to go on Google or something like that, and they're going to find a company that's potentially paying for advertising or larger, that's going to be at more of a market rate. And so we often find that if we buy some pools that are under market value and we give them a price increase to what is like market, their alternatives are searching on Google and seeing our other competitors that are similarly priced. So again, it's not as scary as a lot of us think. And as skimmers preached for years, you do the price increase, you lose a few customers, your revenue is more, your profits more with less work.
Right. We do have a question that what do you consider to be an underpriced pool? And I think I have an idea of how I'd answer that, but I'm gonna let y'all answer that.
20% less than what is typical for that given area. In my market, not every area within the market has the same price for various reasons or factors. But if it's 15 to 20% less, you know, if it's a gated community and I've got 35 pools in there, I know what the market is in that community, both for my pools and I know what other people are charging in that community. So if it's $15 or $20 a month less than that, that's underpriced. But I also know they probably won't find that same price if they shopped it. A lot of times single polers just don't raise, they don't increase. So when they do sell out, there's nowhere for that customer to go to get that same price.
And I think too, if you're on the, I'm thinking about selling side, this is yet another reason why you should make sure that you're keeping up your prices. I mean, if what someone is paying for is a factor of 6 or 10 or 12x of what your monthly service is, that adds up pretty quick. Even a modest increase across the board can add up to a lot of revenue when multiplied like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to be loading Skimmer with the data so they can look at their profit per pool. And that's where we maybe give those big whoppers of a price increase, because we know if we're not, the pool's not profitable. So you guys should all know your average chemical cost per 10,000 gallons, right? Or per average backyard pool. And then know your labor costs for what you're paying or what you want to pay yourself. And with those numbers, that's how you determine if something's underpriced or not. If you have a gross profit margin of 20%, you're not making any money. Though that customer's not paying their fair share of paying for your gas, keeping your lights on at the shop, all the overhead costs, and let alone any profit. So that's how we look at an underpriced pool. And just like Tom, we don't give a price increase right out of the gate. That is one way to really, piss someone off. And so we'll wait a period of time, kind of get them on our normal end of year cycle where we do price increases. And by that time, we have real data in Skimmer. It might be like we have some pools that we wouldn't buy pools at that rate right now, but we know we're profitable for whatever reason. Like it's a good pool. We all know those pools, right? It's just an easy pool. And so we're allowed to keep them at an under market rate. So know your costs per pool.
We have a gentleman named Richard who's asking if y'all are willing to share your average prices of where you're at. And I know there is quite a span between the two, but I know you're also in very vastly different market areas.
Yeah, so our average per pool, so we offer 2 different services. We have a partial service where we're doing the chemicals and emptying the bags and baskets. And then we have our full service where we do everything that's needed. And our average blended across all 1,000 pools at those 2 rates is pushing $160 a month. And then we charge on average 100, 110 per filter cleaning, typically 2 a year. We have mostly cartridge filters here. So there's that twice a year. And then we do an annual chemical fee, which covers all of their specialty chemicals, the spring startup chemicals. We do that once a year based on their gallonage. And that's probably on average $150, $200 a year. And then those salt pools are paying their salt fee annually, and that's another $150 to $200 a year. So aside from that, it's a few small parts they need to replace or repairs.
I'm at just under 120 right now in Southwest Florida. All new customers coming on board, if they're inside of a screened enclosure, are 125. And if they're not, they're 150. Assuming it's a 10,000 gallon pool. There are some exceptions here, but for the most part, we've got a lot of cookie cutter pools, mostly salt, mostly screened in, very easy pools to take care of.
And a very, very tight route, I have to admit. Looking at your customer map brings me great joy. So we talked about, acquiring routes or through a route acquisition, but what other things do each of you do to acquire new accounts? I know you both spend money on digital marketing.
Yes, I do. And one of the tools I use when I am looking to acquire a route is I don't want to pay more to acquire a route than my typical customer acquisition cost from my digital marketing, which is why when I do buy routes, I don't pay 6, 7, 8 months because it doesn't cost me that much otherwise to acquire pools. So typically I'll pay 3 or 4 months, and a lot of people won't sell for that, and I understand that. But some people do because they're in a position where they need to get out or they need to unload some pools or for whatever reason. But if you know what you're spending and what it costs you to acquire a typical pool, that to me is a number I use across the board, whether I'm acquiring it by buying a route or acquiring it by digital marketing. I will sometimes pay a little more if I'm acquiring a route that is very tight and fits my existing route very, very nicely. You know, if somebody's got a dozen pools in a community, I've already got 30. I'll pay a premium for that because they fit the route perfectly. Or if their rates are better than mine, then they're worth a little more to me. These are all things you have to factor in when you're looking at buying a route.
Yeah, the customer acquisition cost is an important number that you also should know what it costs you to get a pool. Might be nothing, right? If it's just word of mouth or referrals, or maybe you give out a free filter cleaning. That would be your cost of acquiring a customer. And hands down, the least expensive way for us is through Google paid advertising. It's far less than acquiring a pool, but we can only get so many. We can only do so many quotes in a day at a certain close rate. Whereas when you are acquiring the pools, you can take over a whole new territory, or you can basically grow pools faster, essentially. And so maybe that's worth a premium because it's an investment, right? It's just like you would park money in the stock market or real estate.
And it increases the value of your company. You know, one of the things I'm looking at, I'm in my mid 50s. I only have so many years left in this business, is scaling my business to the point where I can sell it. So any pool I acquire is adding value to my bottom line. Whereas if I had 20 or 30 years left in the business, that wouldn't be much of a consideration for me now.
You know, you just made me realize something that I think is very important to explain here. I know all business owners like talking about tax write-offs and keeping your that tax bill as low as possible. When you allocate money to buy a pool route, that money is not written off immediately. It's amortized over a crazy amount of time, like something like 15 years.
It is 15 years goodwill.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's a huge dent in your cash flow and your cash position, and you don't see that come back. You would, like buying a big truck that can be written off a lot faster.
We have a question from Mark that I think is a pretty good one. What is your net profit target for each of you?
10 to 20.
Yeah, about 20 is what I target.
There you go. All right. We may have time for more questions, so feel free to pop those in. But real quick, we do have some extra resources. I know we talked about a lot today, but if you are looking for additional resources, especially with regards to things like we talked about a pool service agreement that Kyle has put together for all of his customers that he sends out to every single customer that sets kind of the policies, the guidelines, making sure there's access to the pools. Like he's done a really good job in doing that. We did a webinar around this, and we have a pool service agreement template that's in that pool service agreement toolkit. So if you're looking for a way to be able to draft a pool service agreement, there is a template in there. It also, as a bonus, has a customer data sheet, which gives you all the fields that you would need for inputting into Skimmer, things like gate codes, dogs names, that kind of thing. We also have a price increase toolkit with a price increase calculator. We're going to send that price increase calculator out to everyone who attended this webinar. But what it does is it allows you to say, okay, if I raise, my pool service rates by X amount and I lose 20% of my customers, like, am I still profitable? And that is a pretty eye-opening thing because, as you're looking to raise prices, you might end up breaking even on profit, but having, 20% less the work. And so that might be a worthwhile price increase, one where you intentionally know that you're going to lose people, but you are going to have people that stick around. And so this takes kind of the emotion out of it and allows you to make kind of a decision that's really grounded in data. And you can play with the numbers and model them in different ways, and it'll give you your revenue targets and also allow you to model different loss scenarios. If you were to lose like 10 customers or 5 customers, it'll change the figures to give you an accurate reading there. And then we also talked about digital marketing. We just launched this free marketing 101 for pool pros. It's all about digital marketing, but there's also some great stuff in there about branding. All of these resources are free and available for you to use at getskimmer.com/resources. We also have for Skimmer customers a buying and selling routes and equipment board or forum on our pool deck community. The pool deck is open to anyone, regardless of whether you are a customer or not. We did decide to make this particular forum accessible to customers only, just because we want to keep it as a place where it's peer-to-peer, and we don't want necessarily a bunch of brokers coming in and spamming people. But if you are a legitimate business and you would like access to this forum, you can simply let the community manager know, and we can give you access to this board. Last but not least, I'll let Jasmine talk about this. We do have some enhanced ways to help you as you're acquiring routes to get the data into Skimmer that goes kind of above and beyond just a standard upload. So Jasmine, walk us through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So our customer success team, what we can do for you when you are buying routes, especially from another Skimmer customer, all they're going to have to do is really export a customer list. And then we will format the sheet with all the information that has gate code, tags, all of that stuff, rate types, so that it comes in for you, so you're not manually entering in customers. And even if you're bringing in a sheet from a different place, we can help with the formatting. We can help with bringing in all this additional information so that you're not having to format, to enter in things manually after the fact of importing these customers.
Thank you, Jasmine. And that's just part of what our success team provides here. It looks like we are at time. Let me just browse through questions real quick and see if there's anything else that we can answer live. Oh, it's a good one. What percentage of your revenue is service versus repairs?
More is becoming repairs. Right now I am probably 65-35, 60-40 service to repairs. Whereas a couple of years ago, and certainly when you start out, it's almost all service because you're not doing the repairs and you don't know how to do the repairs.
We're the same, 60% service, 40% repair.
Pretty good number. We do have some additional questions, but I think we're at time. So if you asked a question and we didn't get to it, we will try to get you an answer to those questions if we have your name. If you're an anonymous attendee, we may not know who you are. So if you want to come back in and just leave your email address and your question, we'll get back to you. I wanted to thank you both so very much. Both of you have been with Skimmer for a while, and you're both professionals in your own different ways, even though you serve different markets and you have different styles and philosophies. Your success is a testament to your awesomeness. And for those of you who have joined, if you're not using Skimmer and you would like to try Skimmer, as part of the email that we'll send out to you, there'll be a free trial button that you can click to get your first 30 days free. So I encourage you, if you're wondering about Skimmer, if you're not sure about software in general and you just want to take it for a spin, you'll have access to all of our support resources. We have real life human beings that pick up the phone and that are super pleasant to work with. And we would love to have you join the Skimmer family. That's it for today. Thanks again to those of you who took the time to come to this webinar. And thank you again, Jasmine, and especially thank you, Kyle and Tom. And we hope to see you at the next one. Everyone say bye.
Thank you.